Okay, somebody has reached a point where meeting you has completely scrambled what they thought their type was. Because this isn't just attraction. This is that weird moment where somebody looks at you and thinks, wait, how do you have all of that in one person? And there's one specific quality about you that is making them rethink relationships completely. But I'm not giving that away yet because I want to show you how we get there. A lot of you have spent longer single than you expected. Or maybe you've dated, but nothing really stuck. You could have had chemistry with somebody who couldn't communicate, stability with somebody who didn't excite you, or attraction with somebody who made you feel emotionally exhausted. And after a while you start wondering, am I asking for too much? But I actually think your standards became more precise. And that's where this whole cocktail of true love energy comes in. Because when you make a cocktail, one ingredient by itself isn't the drink, it's the combination. That's how this person experiences you. Maybe they've met somebody beautiful before. Maybe they've met somebody funny, successful, emotionally intelligent, independent, affectionate. But the combination, that's what feels rare. And look at our first card, the Eight of Wands. Symbolically, the Eight of Wands is all about momentum, attention moving quickly, an energy that suddenly has somewhere to go. I'm not using this as a guaranteed prediction. Psychologically, this card fits somebody, realizing their feelings are developing faster than they expected. They may have told themselves they were going to take things slow, stay detached, focus on work, focus on themselves. And then you show up. Now they're noticing everything. How you talk, how you carry yourself, the little expressions you make when you're trying not to laugh, the way you're independent without needing to prove it. And for some of you, this is somebody who already has access to you, socially, casually, maybe through work, mutual friends, online, or a friendship where the emotional temperature has quietly changed. But here's what gets interesting. I don't think they're only excited by you, I think they're relieved by you. Those are two completely different feelings, okay? Excitement they've had before. Relief is new, and that is going to matter a lot when we get to the next card. Because this time, attraction isn't arriving with confusion, games, or emotional chaos attached. And look at this next card, the Nine of Swords. Now, I know this card looks intense, but symbolically, the Nine of Swords deals with anxiety, overthinking, expecting something to go wrong, mentally preparing yourself for a problem that may not even be happening yet. I'm not saying this person is secretly lying awake every night thinking about you. That's not what I'm doing with this card. Psychologically, I think it's showing us the contrast. Because some people get so used to unpredictable relationships that uncertainty starts feeling like attraction. You know what I mean? Waiting 3 hours for a text and suddenly you're thinking about somebody all day. Somebody pulls away and now you want their attention more. Somebody gives you affection and then becomes distant. And your brain starts trying to solve them like a puzzle. That can create intensity. But intensity and intimacy are not the same thing. And I think this person is realizing that with you. Because they can be interested in you, really interested in you, without constantly wondering where they stand. They don't have to analyze every sentence you send. They don't have to wonder whether being vulnerable is going to make you lose interest. They don't feel like they need some perfect strategy to keep your attention. And weirdly enough, that might be unfamiliar to them. For some of you, you're simply consistent. If you like somebody, your behaviour generally reflects that. If something bothers you, maybe you communicate it instead of creating a 6-day mystery around it. You can joke around, flirt, have chemistry, and still make somebody feel like they're dealing with an actual person instead of an emotional escape room. And that's the relief. It's almost like their nervous system is saying, wait, I can want this person without feeling like I have to survive this person. That's huge. Because maybe one ingredient they never consciously put on their relationship checklist was peace, not boredom, peace. There's a difference. Boredom is when nothing is happening. Peace is when something meaningful can happen without everything constantly being on fire. And I think that's part of why this attraction is moving so quickly. They're not spending half of their emotional energy managing confusion. that energy can actually go toward noticing you, enjoying you, getting curious about you. But here's the thing. Peace still isn't the quality I was talking about at the beginning. It's important, it's probably one of the ingredients they didn't realise they were missing, but there is something else about you that makes the entire combination work, and that's the part that really messes with their definition of a type. And look at what comes out next, the Nine of Pentacles reversed. This is interesting because upright, the Nine of Pentacles can symbolise independence, self-sufficiency, knowing your value, being comfortable in your own life. Reversed, psychologically, it can bring up the question of what happens when independence becomes so familiar that you don't really know how to let somebody fit into the life you've built. And I think that's relevant here, because this person may be used to trade-offs. They've met somebody magnetic before, but that person was inconsistent. They've met somebody successful, but emotionally you couldn't get within 10 feet of them. Somebody affectionate, but suddenly affection became dependency. Somebody independent, but so independent that there wasn't really room for another person. You see what I'm saying? Usually there was an and. They're attractive and they're exhausting. They're funny and everything becomes a joke when you try to have a serious conversation. They're mature, and somehow being around them feels like attending a staff meeting. There's always been something. But with you, this person keeps finding qualities that they thought came on opposite ends of the spectrum existing in the same person. You can have your own life and still make room for somebody. You can enjoy attention without needing constant reassurance. You can be warm without immediately attaching yourself to somebody. You can be playful and then, when the conversation gets serious, actually stay in the room emotionally. And that's where this Nine of Pentacles reversed gets really interesting to me. Because I don't think it's saying, you need somebody. I think it's asking whether two people who are perfectly capable of standing on their own might actually choose to stop treating independence like the final destination. That's different. And for some of you, that's exactly what is changing in this person's head. At first, maybe the question was, am I attracted to them? That's easy. Now the question is becoming, could I actually build something with them? Could they fit into my life without consuming it? Could I fit into theirs without asking them to become smaller? Could there be closeness without somebody losing themselves? And here's what's interesting. Those questions usually don't show up when somebody is just physically attracted to you. They show up when attraction starts acquiring weight. Because now this person isn't only noticing what you have. They're noticing how your qualities work together. And the strangest part is, I think there's one quality in that combination they never even knew to look for. It probably wasn't on their list. They may not even have had a word for it before meeting you. But once they recognize it, this stops feeling like ordinary attraction very quickly. And then we get the Five of Cups, which actually explains a lot. Symbolically, the Five of Cups can deal with disappointment, emotional history, and the tendency to keep looking at what went wrong, because that's what you've learned to expect. Again, I'm not saying this person is sitting around devastated over an ex. Psychologically, this can be much simpler than that. Sometimes your type is just what your nervous system recognizes. That's the uncomfortable part. Maybe they were drawn to people who were slightly unavailable because having to earn somebody's attention felt exciting. Maybe they were used to very intense connections where everything happened quickly, emotions were everywhere, and somehow that intensity got labelled as passion. Or maybe they kept choosing people who made them wonder, do they actually like me? Why are they pulling away? What do I need to do differently? And when you've experienced that enough times, familiarity can start wearing the costume of compatibility. That's what I think this Five of Cups is bringing up, because you don't necessarily activate the same pattern, and at first that can almost confuse somebody. They might think, why does this feel different? Not bad, just different. Because the usual ingredients aren't there. They're not having to chase, they're not trying to decode you, they're not getting a huge emotional high, followed by 3 days of wondering what happened. And sometimes butterflies and alarm bells show up wearing very similar outfits, okay? So if somebody has spent years associating uncertainty with chemistry, meeting a person who feels attractive and emotionally understandable can completely mess with their internal definition of attraction. But here's the surprise. They're not getting bored. They're noticing more. Because when they're not using all of their attention trying to figure out whether you like them, they can actually pay attention to who you are. Your humour. The way you respond when something doesn't go perfectly. How you treat people when there's nothing to gain from it. Whether you can disagree without turning everything into a power struggle. The little things that usually get missed when a connection is running entirely on adrenaline. And I think that's why this is becoming more serious than they expected. Because the safer this feels, the more room there is for actual attachment. That's where it gets a little scary for them. Not because you're dangerous. Because now there might actually be something here worth losing. And casual attraction is easy when you believe you'll recover quickly. But when somebody starts thinking, wait, what if I don't find this combination again? That's when people stop feeling quite so casual about what happens next. And look at what comes out here. The Four of Wands reversed. This is interesting, because upright the Four of Wands can symbolize stability, celebration, something becoming established, that feeling of, okay, this actually has somewhere to go. Reversed, psychologically, I read it more as somebody realizing they want that stability, while also becoming very aware of everything that could interrupt it, and that's where people can get careful. Sometimes you're extremely bold with somebody you don't care that much about. You'll send the text, you'll flirt, you'll say whatever comes into your head, because, realistically, if it doesn't work out, okay. But when somebody starts feeling rare, suddenly they're rereading things. Did that sound weird? Was I too obvious? Are they talking to somebody else? Do they actually see me the way I see them? And for some of you, this person could be trying very hard not to show just how impressed they are. Not because I want to romanticize somebody being inconsistent with you. If they're disappearing for weeks, playing games, refusing to communicate, that's not secretly profound because a tarot card came out, okay? But genuine thoughtfulness can look like somebody slowing down because they realize their choices actually matter now. There's more at stake emotionally, and I think that's the waited forever feeling in this reading. Not, I've finally found a flawless human being who checks every box. Nobody is doing that. It's more like, wait, these are the qualities I kept finding separately, the attraction over here, the emotional maturity over there, the independence in one person, the warmth in another, the humour somewhere else. And now they're experiencing enough of those things together that losing access to the connection would actually disappoint them. That's different from just wanting somebody. Because now they may be watching whether you're available, paying attention to how other people respond to you, wondering whether they have as much time as they thought they did. And again, that's not ownership. You are not a prize somebody gets to claim because they noticed your value. But psychologically, realizing that somebody valuable has choices can force a person to confront their own intentions. Am I actually going to show up here? And we're getting very close to that quality I mentioned at the beginning. Because it's not your looks, it's not your independence, it's not success, intelligence, humour, any of that by itself. It's something you seem to do inside connection. Something about the way you can be close to somebody without losing yourself, or requiring them to lose themselves. And once this person sees that clearly, I think that where desire starts looking a lot more like longevity. And then we get the Magician. Okay? This is actually the card that makes the whole thing click for me. Because symbolically, the Magician is about having access to different tools and knowing how to use them together. It's not one quality being impressive by itself, it's range, it's integration. And psychologically, I think that's exactly what this person is responding to in you. You contain opposites without them cancelling each other out. That's the quality. You can be soft without becoming somebody who has no boundaries. You can be independent without making closeness feel like an intrusion. You can care about somebody deeply without suddenly making them responsible for your entire emotional world. And those are very different things, okay? Because I think this person may have spent a long time believing relationships always came with some kind of choice. You get freedom, or you get closeness. You get chemistry, or you get peace. You get somebody ambitious, but they're never available. You get somebody affectionate, but now you can't breathe. You get somebody exciting, but nothing feels secure. And then they meet you and they're going, wait, why do I have to choose? That's what scrambles the type. For some of you, they've watched you set a boundary without turning cold afterward. Maybe you said no to something. Maybe you disagreed with them. Maybe you didn't rearrange your entire schedule just because they wanted your attention. But you were still warm, still yourself, still connected. And that does something to somebody who's used to boundaries, meaning rejection, or affection, meaning obligation. Or maybe they've seen you be genuinely affectionate, and then go right back to your own life. You're interested, you're present, but you're not disappearing into them, and I think that's the thing they didn't know belonged on the list. Range. The ability to move between tenderness and strength, seriousness and playfulness, closeness and individuality, without becoming a completely different person every time. That's not flashy at first, but once somebody notices it, it becomes very difficult to unnotice, because now they're not just thinking, I really like this person. They're thinking, this changes what I thought a relationship had to feel like. And that is much bigger, because admiration can stay in the present. You can admire somebody and never imagine anything beyond Friday night. But when somebody starts seeing a way of relating that solves problems they assumed were just part of love, now the mind starts wandering forward. And I think that's where this person is going next. Not necessarily into some giant fantasy, something much more revealing. They're starting to revise the kind of future they thought they wanted. And then we get the King of Swords reversed. Which is interesting because this doesn't immediately look like a soft romantic card, but I actually think that's the point. Upright, the King of Swords can symbolize logic, structure, having a clear plan, knowing exactly how something is supposed to work. Reversed, psychologically, it can show what happens when those rules stop making sense. And I think this person had rules. Maybe commitment meant giving something up. Freedom, time, peace. Maybe they imagined relationships as this constant negotiation where somebody always wants more, somebody always compromises more, and eventually both people are slightly annoyed about it. So they learned how to organize their life around themselves. And then you show up and complicate the theory. Because now they're asking different questions. Would I actually like everyday life with this person? Would we still have things to talk about when nothing dramatic is happening? Could I be fully myself here? Those aren't fantasy questions. Those are compatibility questions. And that's why I think this is becoming more serious. Because strangely the fantasy isn't getting bigger, it's getting more ordinary. They're not necessarily imagining some dramatic movie scene where everything is perfect forever. They might be imagining you in the passenger seat while they're irritated about traffic, going grocery shopping together and arguing about which cereal to buy. A boring Tuesday. An inside joke that makes absolutely no sense to anybody else. A trip where something goes wrong, and they get to see whether the two of you laugh, adapt, or spend 6 hours blaming each other. That's the stuff. Because attraction can survive a perfect date. Partnership has to survive somebody being tired. And I think they're beginning to wonder whether being with you would actually expand their life, instead of taking it over. Could they desire you and respect you? Could they confide in you without feeling managed? Could you both have separate interests, separate friends, separate moods, and still feel connected? That's a very different picture of commitment than, now I have to give up half of myself. And this King of Swords reversed feels like an old definition losing authority. Like, maybe I didn't hate relationships. Maybe I hated the versions of relationships I kept experiencing. That's a big realization. But now there's another problem. Because the more they recognize your value, the harder it becomes to assume they're the only person capable of recognizing it. And I think that's where this gets interesting again. Because eventually they have to consider something they may not particularly enjoy. Considering, other people probably notice you too. And then we get the Five of Wands reversed, which is very interesting right here. Because upright, the Five of Wands can symbolize competition, friction, everybody trying to get their position, everybody wanting to be noticed. Reversed, psychologically, I think it becomes less about fighting for somebody and more about realizing you don't actually want to play that game anymore. And that's important. Because I'm not saying this person suddenly believes there are 10 people lined up outside your house trying to date you. That's not the point. The point is that they may be realizing you are not sitting around waiting for somebody to finally decide you're worth choosing. You have a life, you have standards, you have your own timing. And if somebody wants access to you in a meaningful way, eventually they have to participate in that connection clearly. That's where admiration starts turning into urgency. Not panic, urgency. Because earlier, this person was still trying to understand what they were feeling. Why am I so interested? Why does this feel different? Why am I thinking about this person in a way I wasn't planning to? Now, the question becomes, how long can I just think about it? Because hesitation has a cost. And again, I don't mean they need to chase you around or compete with imaginary people. Healthy urgency isn't, I have to win. It's, if I care, I probably need to show up. Those are completely different energies. And remember the Eight of Wands from the beginning? That card started this whole thing with momentum, feelings moving faster than expected. Attention suddenly having somewhere to go. I think we're seeing the other side of that now. At some point, momentum can't stay internal. You can't keep noticing somebody, imagining possibilities, recognizing their value, and then expect the connection to remain frozen while you decide what you want forever. And this is where that waited forever to find a catch like you feeling really starts making sense, because it's not that you're perfect. It's that this person may feel like they spent years encountering pieces of what they wanted, and now enough of those pieces are showing up together that waiting starts feeling riskier than moving. That's a very different place emotionally. But here's what I really want to get into next. Because even all of this, the attraction, the peace, the range, the independence, the emotional maturity, that still doesn't fully explain the impact. The next part is about why those qualities become more powerful together than any one of them could ever be on its own. And then we get the Page of Wands reversed, which honestly makes the cocktail metaphor even more important. Because upright, the Page of Wands can symbolize that first spark, excitement, curiosity. That feeling of, oh, this is interesting. I want to see where this goes. Reverse psychologically, it can point to what happens when excitement by itself doesn't know what to do with itself, and that's the difference here, because a spark is easy. A spark can happen because somebody is attractive, because the conversation is good, because there's tension, because somebody is new. But a spark by itself doesn't tell you whether you actually like the person once the novelty wears off. That's where the combination matters. Think about the cocktail again. A memorable drink isn't necessarily made from ingredients nobody has ever tasted before. It's the proportions, the balance, the way one ingredient changes the experience of another. And that's how I think this person experiences you. Your confidence makes your tenderness stand out more. Your independence makes your affection feel chosen. That's important. Because when somebody knows you don't need to attach yourself to them, your warmth means something different. It feels like you're here because you genuinely want to be here. Your humour makes your emotional depth easier to approach. Your standards make your kindness feel intentional instead of automatic. And your stability gives the attraction somewhere to go, instead of letting it burn really bright for 3 weeks and then collapse under its own intensity. Do you see what I mean? None of these qualities is doing all the work, they're changing each other. And I think that's why this person's feelings may actually be harder for them to categorize than usual. Because maybe they're accustomed to liking people in pieces. I love their confidence, but I love how affectionate they are, but the chemistry is amazing. But there's always been a section of the relationship they had to mentally work around. With you, they're starting to think about the whole experience, not just, do I desire this person, but do I like who I am around them? Do I respect them? Can I relax around them? Can I still be excited by them 6 months after I know what their favourite takeout order is? That's the cocktail. Excitement and relief. Chemistry without needing chaos to keep it alive. Desire that can actually imagine longevity. And I think that's why this has hit them differently. But before we close this out, there's one thing I really don't want you to miss. Being somebody's rare catch is flattering. Being somebody's finally can feel amazing, but this reading can't end with you sitting there wondering whether they choose you. Because there's another choice here that matters just as much. And then we get strength, which feels like exactly the right card to end on. Because symbolically, strength isn't really about forcing anything. It's not about controlling somebody, convincing somebody, or proving that you're valuable enough to be chosen. It's quieter than that. It's knowing what you bring into a connection without needing to abandon yourself to keep one. And I think that's the other choice here. Do you choose this? Because we started this reading talking about how some of you have wondered, am I asking for too much? Maybe you had chemistry with somebody who couldn't communicate. Maybe you had stability with somebody who didn't excite you. Maybe you were deeply attracted to somebody who also left you emotionally exhausted. And after enough experiences like that, it's very easy to assume the solution is to lower the standard. Want less, expect less, be easier to satisfy. But I don't actually think that's what happened here. I think you got more precise. You started realizing that compatibility isn't one impressive quality. It's not, well, they're attractive, so I guess I'll ignore everything else. It's not, they're successful, so maybe emotional availability doesn't matter. It's not even, they really like me, so that must mean we're right for each other. Being wanted and being well matched are not the same thing. And strength brings that distinction back to you, because yes, this person may see you as rare, they may feel relieved by you, they may be fascinated by the fact that you can be independent and warm, strong and soft, playful and emotionally serious, that's meaningful, but admiration still has to become something you can actually experience. Consistency, clarity, effort, reciprocity, otherwise you're just somebody's amazing idea. And you deserve more than being admired from a distance. That's where the cocktail of true love thing lands for me. It isn't one perfect person showing up with every possible quality. It's two people bringing enough of the right ingredients and actually meeting each other there. Chemistry and communication, excitement and peace, freedom and closeness, attraction and respect, and both people choosing to participate. So were you asking for too much? Maybe not. Maybe you were just learning which ingredients you couldn't keep pretending were optional. And if somebody looks at you now and thinks, I've waited forever to find someone like this. Beautiful. Let them recognize it. But the real question is whether what they bring to the table makes you feel like you've finally found something worth choosing too. Because the best love isn't just being somebody's catch, it's finally being met.